In other news, the United Kingdom has imposed sanctions on 6 individuals in charge of the Arctic penal colony where the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny died last week. The European Union is also moving closer to imposing its sanctions as well on Russia. To tell us a bit more, our foreign editor Philip Turl is with me. And Philip, what can you tell us about these new British sanctions?
Well, Nadia, this is the first time that sanctions have actually been imposed on members of the penal colony. This is on the head of it, Colonel Vadim Kalinin, and 5 of his deputies, who are now no longer allowed to travel to the UK. And if they have any assets there, those assets are going to be frozen. The British Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, has said that it's clear that the Russian authorities saw Navalny as a threat, which is why Britain is sanctioning the prison officials responsible for his custody. There are calls in the UK that say, well, look, this doesn't really go far enough. Alicia Kearns, who's the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, said that more sanctions need to be imposed because basically we don't know if these officials in Russia had any intention of travelling to the UK and probably don't have any assets there anyway. It's quite a symbolic move. But you're right, there are other sanctions which are on the cards for the next couple of days. The EU has already voted for more sanctions to be imposed on Russia. There was a deal yesterday with the EU ambassadors announced by the Belgian presidency of the Council, saying that they'd agreed in principle on a 13th package of sanctions for the Russians. You have to remember that both Britain and the European Union have imposed some of the toughest sanctions on Russia since the invasion of Ukraine back in 2022, just 2 years ago. And in those sanctions, 200 extra people have been banned from travel to the EU from Russia. This is in the new EU sanctions being announced this week. That's 2,000 people in all now no longer able to travel to the EU, the freezing of their individual and company assets. And what the European Union is trying to do now also is to try to sanction other countries like Uzbekistan, China, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, because they say that Russia is getting round the sanctions by exporting to them, and then they're exporting back to the European Union, and that's why these sanctions are going to hit harder. And one last point is that the US is also set to introduce a new round of sanctions, which is due to be announced tomorrow.
Philip, though, as you say, there have been a range of sanctions already imposed on Russia since the war in Ukraine began. So will these actually have a big effect?
OK, 2 points. They don't appear to be having a very big effect right now. If you look at GDP in Russia, it's at 3.1%. There's only a 2.9% unemployment rate. They're selling lots of oil and coal to Russia and India, so they're getting round all of that. But on the long term, those sanctions are biting. 300 billion worth of euros of central bank reserves are blocked. 70% of assets in the Russian banking system are under sanctions, and 20 billion assets of 1,500 people and entities are frozen. So the long-term prospect is, yes, they will bite, but they're not biting very hard right now.